I didn't know whether to be really honest about my journey or whether to sort of sugarcoat it a bit, because I think as someone's newly diagnosed with spinal cavernoma, it's a really, really scary time. I want people to know that if you do have surgery, if you're in a fortunate position that it's accessible and you can have the surgery, for me it was a game changer, because it just felt like I was taking control back of my life. I first found out I had cavernoma in the spine when it was in 2008. It literally just happened completely out of the blue. I was completely fine all day. That evening I went out and I went to the supermarket a little bit later on, and I was like, oh, this is embarrassing. My leg's dragging. And I kind of thought, is it because I've had a couple of drinks? And I was like, oh, how embarrassing. I'm in the supermarket and I'm a bit tipsy. After a couple of weeks, I went to the GP because it was still playing up. And that was when I described my symptoms, and she said she felt like it could be neurological. Luckily, the company that I worked for at the time had private healthcare. And so I was very lucky that I got rushed through the system super quickly, scanned, diagnosed. He knew it was cavernoma. They did the, probably shouldn't have done, slightly scary thing of calling it a benign tumour, which immediately really freaked me out. Luckily, I had someone with me, so they were able to retain the information that I didn't take in, because I was thinking the worst. And then I had a course of steroids for about a week, which was awful. Another week later, I had another scan, and the steroids had shrunk the cavernoma a little bit. And yeah, that was sort of the start of it, really. And it was really scary. But I didn't actually start seeing a proper neurologist at Queen Square in London until 2012. So this was, you know, a good 6 years later. I had 9 months worth of physiotherapy once a week. I was a bit better, but not, I still had an obvious limp and was still dragging and had foot drop where you can't walk heel to toe anymore. But it wasn't as bad as it was. And they said, we think you've plateaued now. And that to me was, as someone who had always been a really good walker, I was always like one of those ones that people always, I used to have people, I know this sounds silly, but people used to stop me in the street and say, you walk like a model. I was always very stride, you know, big strides, purposeful, always wearing high heels, do everything in heels. And so to have that taken away from me felt like I'd had like my femininity taken away from me. And it was really horrible at the time, especially when you're only like 25, 26 years old and you're still in the thick of having a great social life and all that, and suddenly that's sort of taken away. Fortunately, once they said, we think you've plateaued, that's when the stairs at the new house came in handy, because I decided to take every stair, bearing in mind it was a 3-storey house. I took every stair on the left side, which was the one that had, you know, was not working properly, took every stair 2 at a time on that leg, and that really helped. Within about 3 months I was walking normally, and I couldn't run, but I was never much of a runner, so that was fine. I couldn't sort of jump about, but I could dance a little bit, and that was okay for a good sort of like that for about 3 years, up until 2012. I was in a relatively new job, and it was really out of my comfort zone. I was working at a hospital in admin, but it was very involved. It was for mental health conditions. And then completely out of the blue, for no reason whatsoever, it was like my brain just broke and I had a mental breakdown, and there was nothing wrong with my life other than sort of feeling a bit uncertain at work. Around the same time, my legs started to drag again. I ended up being referred to a hospital in London, Queen Square, and started seeing, having consultations. I think it was yearly consultations and yearly scans as well. And they confirmed it had another bleed. But it was just so weird that it was this time the symptoms were so different. Even though it was still the drag, it wasn't it can't have been a catastrophic bleed, because sometimes I could walk normally and then sometimes I couldn't. So that's when things started to sort of happen much more gradually. It was almost worse in a way, because you end up over a period of time knowing your limitations and knowing that there's certain things that are going to trigger it not being able to walk normally. But it ends up being almost like a bit of a hidden disability, and people don't believe you maybe around the workplace. No, I can't carry really heavy things because I need to be able to concentrate on trying to get, my feet working okay. But because you're seen to be out sort of walking normally most of the time, people might just think that you don't want to do it, or maybe you're being lazy or something, or work shy. But actually I couldn't walk and talk at the same time, because I was always having to concentrate on the natural heel to toe of walking. It wasn't a natural thing anymore, or muscle memory that people take for granted. So between 2012 and 2018, that percentage of walking well and not walking well closed. And it got to the point where I had to have an FES machine to pick my foot up when I walked. I couldn't walk without a crutch. Yeah, it got more and more difficult and more unpredictable. I was working hard doing physio exercises to try and get the movement back, and I'd finally feel like I was getting somewhere. And then I'd wake up and it would just be dragging again. And it just got so soul destroying, and I just felt like I had a time bomb in my spine that was just ruling my life. And I thought, I need to take power back. I need to take control back. I want the surgery. But obviously then you've got to convince your surgeon that it's the right thing to do, which they still weren't entirely sure about. And eventually, I'd say it was a good sort of 6 months before I had the actual surgery, I started seeing a new neurologist surgeon who was recently promoted to professor, and he was quite positive about surgery. I told him that I felt like I wanted the surgery, but I was scared, because what if the surgery paralysed me, and is it almost like a vanity thing that I want it? He said it's just getting worse and worse. It's getting to the point now it will paralyse you, so we need to take it out. And I just felt such a weight off my shoulders that he was saying it needs to come out. A lot of damage had been done to the nerves already in my spinal cord from the bleeds. So I was never, ever going to be able to walk normally again or anything. But if I got back to sort of baseline, which was walking with a crutch, then that would be okay. My only thing was I wanted to not have it there anymore. So complete resection and not be paralysed from the surgery. And as far as I'm concerned, massive success. And I'm so glad I did it. Even though I'm more disabled now than I was before surgery, I'm so glad. So glad it's gone. You think, being disabled is going to be the worst thing in the world. And actually that's just ableism. And it's not. I've actually learned you can live without your legs. You can't live without your arms. My arms and my hands are so important. I've developed really good upper body strength. I'm able to put together a chest of drawers from a seated position on the floor. Sometimes, you get creative. You learn ways to sort of anchor yourself. I like myself. I really like myself. I'm really proud of myself. And I'm so independent. I run a household all by myself. And I don't think people give enough credit to like the little wins, like just little things like making something. Yes, I have a perching stool in the kitchen, but making something to eat, putting the washing on. I have all these little tactics. I think if I were to give myself, my 25-year-old newly diagnosed self, advice, you can do it and don't worry. And yeah, I know it sounds cheesy and cliche, but it is going to be okay. And you've got this, and you're much stronger than you know.